All right. So you spoke a lot about the farm bill here today. Could you just touch on just the importance for our farmers and especially for our region that we get a new farm bill going into this next year?
Yes. Look, we have been living on last year's farm bill. We redo the farm bill every 5 years for a reason, because the ag economics change and the market changes. And in this case, after 4 years of this administration, we've seen inflation at record highs. Right now, the biggest challenge beyond just weather conditions and drought, although that's a problem, is the input costs. The diesel, the fertilizer, the seed is exponentially higher than it was in the last farm bill. So we have to make those changes in the safety net to reflect the higher input cost. And right now, they're living off the last farm bill. So I think the opportunity in the lame duck between this election and the end of the year, we'll get something. The Senate's not finished even passing something out of committee. The House has passed theirs, the House Republicans. It's been bipartisan. Democrats are on the bill too. It's not perfect. I think we've got to make some changes in the farm bill before we put it on the floor, which is why it's not on the floor yet. But it's an imperative piece of federal policy for farm communities like West Texas, but it's also important for everybody who eats, because it turns out that food security is national security, and we can't depend on foreign countries for our food supply, which is why we got to have what they call a stabilizer for the ag economy, which is the farm bill. So we're underway. We're overdue to get it done, and we should get it done by the end of the year.
So when looking at these elections, the Republicans have a narrow majority in the House right now. How much would keeping and or expanding that majority do for you going into this next year?
It would be tremendous if we can get the Senate and maintain the House and have the White House in Republican hands. If that happens, we can advance our agenda through what is called budget reconciliation, and we can start reining in the out-of-control, reckless spending that is racking up a national debt that's higher than it was in World War II. It can start tamping down on inflation, which cost of living is, I think, the biggest concern for every American. And then we can do some things in energy policy, border security, which is the most imminent threat to the safety of our citizens. So having the trifecta, Republican control over both chambers of Congress and the White House, would be huge in what we can accomplish and advancing a conservative agenda to reverse so many of the things that have happened that have made things less stable, less safe, more vulnerable, and less optimistic, quite frankly, about the future. That all can change if we can win all three chambers, if you will, get all three legs of the stool in Republican control.
You talked a little bit about energy production, especially just in Texas, and energy independence for the country as a whole. When I spoke with Representative Pfluger, he told me he's a fan of what works. You know, he's not so much that he's just digging his heels in on fossil fuel, but as long as it works, he'll support it. Where do you stand as far as energy goes?
Well, what we know is all this renewable energy, which is fine and good to continue to develop the technologies to make it more feasible and sustainable, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work without government subsidy and government intervention. I'm not saying there's not a responsible way to make that investment for the future, but today, fossil fuels or conventional fuels like oil and gas, they drive the cranks on this economy, the greatest, most dynamic economy in the world. I'm talking about the US of A. So it is foolish to have an administration with policies that just have a whole of government attack on the lifeblood of our economy. It keeps prices low for consumers who heat and cool their homes with natural gas and electricity. It helps us get to and from work with low cost. It makes the economy more efficient, and it gives us energy independence. Ask Europe how that's working out with their dependence on Russia, and Russia's piping in gas to their country because they're not producing it anymore. They bought into the Green New disaster, which is, to me, climate extremes, and there's a better and more balanced approach to this, but it starts with unleashing domestic oil and gas production. And by the way, natural gas has helped us reduce our carbon footprint. It's actually made us have a more sustainable energy economy. So in terms of the environment and environmental impact, there's so much good that comes from oil and gas. We do it better, more efficiently, cleaner, with more environmental, positive impact than any other nation. So we've got to totally reverse course from the direction that this administration has this country on with respect to energy. We are upside down on energy policy, and it doesn't mean that we can't invest in future renewable resources, but that cannot be your bread and butter. It does not exist today. As you said, it does not work unless the government's putting a bunch of money into it. So we can do better, be smarter, and we don't have to put our economy and our security in peril because of bad energy policy. And that's one of the first things that has to change if we get a new president and we have Republican majority leadership in the House and Senate.
A couple more for you if you've got the time.
Yeah.
When I say the word water...
Only because I'm giving you long answers, so I'm going to give you more
It
time.
works out for me. When I say the word water, what's the first thing that comes to mind for West Texas?
Lifeblood of ag and energy. Without water, there is no breadbasket and energy basin. There's no food, fuel, and fiber epicenter, which is what West Texas is for the rest of the country and the world. So you have to have water, and we have an abundance of it underground. Unfortunately, a lot of it is brackish water that would need to be cleaned up, and the fresh water is receding. So it's a finite resource, and we have to solve that problem, or we're going to be in a world of hurt from our life, our lifestyle of ag and energy, and the lifeblood of our economy, which is ag and energy. Those are issues that are best dealt with at the local level, and with the state of Texas and the state legislature. I don't want the federal government anywhere near the water rights of Texans. So it's a very important issue, critical to our future, but the save and accept some investment in water infrastructure, just like we have transportation infrastructure investment at the federal level. I don't want the feds anywhere near my water rights and the water rights of my ag and energy producers and my fellow Texas citizens.
So as a Republican incumbent with strong support in your home district, how does the election cycle change for you? It's obviously still busy. I know you've got to get out the door in a second, but what's different for you as opposed to someone who's really just fighting tooth and nail to keep their seat?
Well, it gives me an opportunity to travel the country and help other members of my party, members of my Republican conference who are fighting on the razor's edge of their political lives, right? They're in swing states and swing districts. Now I can come in, provide some resources for them. So we're very generous. We've probably contributed to 170 plus members of Republican members of the House. But I also speak to the issues of inflation, economic policies that would bring prosperity and greater opportunity and quality of life, higher wages, better and higher paying jobs, and the national debt, which is, I think, the biggest threat to the future of our country. I can talk about those things in general elections in swing states and districts and help my colleagues, because it turns out those pocketbook issues of inflation, the economy, and the national debt are important to everybody. And regardless of your political affiliation, people want it to stop. They want cost control. They want inflation to stop. They can't afford to provide for their families and pay the bills. And they want a different path. They want a different economic policy agenda. And they want less spending, which was really the fuse that created the firestorm of a cost of living crisis. So I can speak to those things as budget chairman and as a Ways and Means member. And I wouldn't have the luxury of traveling the country to help make sure that we not only maintain but grow the Republican majority in the House. But thanks to a strong conservative district and very generous people, I get to go help our cause nationally, and that's what I've been doing. Tucson, Arizona, from California to New York. I'm going to the Rio Grande Valley, and I think tomorrow I'm going to New Mexico, eastern New Mexico, to help Yvette Harrell, who's a former Republican congresswoman who was defeated by a Democrat and has a really good chance at coming back. Grow that majority, and that's where I'm spending a lot of my time.
How do you tamper focus on the national election, especially which is really how chaotic it is on social media and in media in general, and get people to focus on their local elections?
Well, it's hard because I think so much of the federal government and national policies are impacting our daily lives, namely in Texas, the wide open, lawless border and the threats to the safety and security of our citizens, and the spending and failed economic policies of this administration and the impact on their personal budgets. And I mean, on average, families are paying $1,400 more for the same goods and services that they were buying prior to this record inflation. It's the worst and cruelest and most regressive tax on the American people and on small businesses today. So it's consuming everybody's thoughts. But it's important we get the right kind of leadership at every level of government. I think in West Texas, we're pretty safe in terms of having good common sense and conservative values at the local level. Texas, I think generally, especially those representing West Texas in Austin, I think that's a pretty sure bet you're going to get conservative leadership. Not so optimistic that it's going to just happen without a lot of help nationally and in swing districts in states like New York, Nevada, Arizona, California, et cetera. So that's where I think my folks want me to spend my October leading up to the most consequential election of our lifetime. And so I'm depositing a little bit of West Texas love all around the country so that we can have the right kind of leadership that reflects the values and the people and the culture of West Texas, which I think is best for everybody in the country, quite frankly.
Is there anything we missed or anything else?
No, you asked great questions.
Right.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how you're going to distill all that down.